Let's talk about the characteristics of life, and I'd like to first show you these two pictures over here. Here on the left side, this one is a single-celled organism. It's known as Paramecium, and it lives in water. And Chlamydomonas over here, this is a picture of an algae. It's a plant. It's a single-celled plant, which is green normally. It does not look green here because it's an electron micrograph, and they are not able to show color. But even though these organisms have a very different way of life, they have different energy sources and so on, there are certain things that all living things have in common. And we're going to look at that right now using these two as an example. So what are some of the things that living organisms have in common? Here is a complete table, and I'm going to explain you now the individual the table point by point. Over here, really important is the list of words over here. All organisms require nutrition, and that's basically food. They need some kind of a food source, and Paramecium over here ingests. It basically means it takes up smaller organisms, and for example bacteria, smaller debris, cell fragments, whatever you see floating around here in the water, it basically takes it up. How does it take it up? You see that the Paramecium has many small, tiny little hair over here. These are called cilia, and they're moving and they're beating, and therefore they generate a water flow. And all these particles here, the food particles, are sucked up into the mouth of the cell, which probably is over here. There's an opening in the side, and it goes into the cell, and inside the cell it's digested. And these could be, for example, bacteria. The Paramecium itself is a eukaryote, so it means it has a nucleus. You see cell organelles in here. Now, I do not know where the nucleus is right now. It could be one of these structures, a little bit difficult to see. Trust me, a nucleus is present. It takes up the bacteria, the cellular debris, the food particles, and it takes them up into the cell and it's digested in there. And that's the energy source and the food source. Chlamydomonas, in contrast, being a plant, does photosynthesis. It is able to make its own food using carbon dioxide, sunlight, and water. Very different way of feeding. Still, it's a way of feeding, and that's one of the characteristics of all living things is nutrition. So, what about the next one? Paramecium growth is another one. Paramecium grows by ingesting and assimilating food. This means that the food particles that the cell takes up essentially are used to make a new cell material. So the food particles become part of the cell. They're digested internally and incorporated, and this incorporation is referred to as assimilation. Chlamydomonas also grows, but it increases its size due to photosynthesis. It makes new organic material by photosynthesis, not by feeding on other things, but by making its own food using carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. And the food which is made this way is then used to make more cell material, and that's how it increases in size. So growth, very important. So you can even see that single-celled organisms like these are able to grow. Response means it reacts to environmental stimuli. And Paramecium, with its little cilia, is able to swim around in water. And when it bumps into an obstacle, it doesn't try to continue. It simply reverses and goes into the other direction. So that is called response. It reacts to an external stimulus. And Chlamydomonas also does that. It swims towards light. So over here, the obstacle is the stimulus, and over here the light is. Again, different purposes, different things, but still, all living things respond. When you are hot, when you feel hot, you also respond. You open the window, or you try to drink some cold water. You also do something in order to, you also react to the environment. So, excretion is the production of wastes, and Paramecium produces CO2. So the food particles which are taken in are respired in there by cell respiration, and CO2 is formed, and this CO2 is given off into the water as a waste. Okay, so what about Chlamydomonas being a plant? It also produces a waste, but this waste is called oxygen gas. O2. Yes, this is a waste excretory product of plants. During photosynthesis, they produce oxygen, which is not needed, and it's given off. So that is another thing, excretion. Metabolism, all living things metabolize. This means metabolism is a term which refers to all chemical reactions in a cell. Metabolism is all chemical reactions in a cell, and both of them do that, obviously. Photosynthesis is a chemical reaction, it's metabolism. Cell respiration over here, the uptake, digestion and respiration of the food particles, of course, is called metabolism. We human beings also metabolize. We produce waste gas, and we eat food, we respirate, produce waste gas, and this whole process is also known as metabolism. All living things do that. Homeostasis, slightly more difficult to explain. Cells and all living things in general have to make sure that inside of the cell, the conditions are more or less constant. So, for example, if inside the paramecium, if there is too much water, then it is important that the water is pumped out of the cell so it does not burst. So, and this maintaining of a constant internal conditions is known as homeostasis. Paramecium is worried about not losing too much water and not gaining too much water. Believe it or not, same for human beings and other animals. When we drink too much water, we have to go to the toilet more often. More water is given off. If it's very hot outside, and if we do not drink a lot of water, then more water has to be retained in the blood. Another example of homeostasis in human beings, for example, is the maintaining of a constant body temperature. And that's basically also one thing that all living things do, maintaining constant conditions. Reproduction, all living things have to reproduce. There are different ways how this can be done. Asexually, by cell division, Chlamydomonas and Paramecium are able to do that. They're able to divide and split into two, and then you have two organisms. And they're also able to reproduce sexually by producing so-called gametes. Now, human beings only reproduce sexually and not asexually. Obviously, I'm not able to split myself into two, but it doesn't matter. Still, all living things reproduce. So that's basically, these are important characteristics of life, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And one important thing is living things must have all of them. Because what you can say is, well, actually, cars produce CO2 as a waste gas. You use fuel and they produce CO2 as a waste gas. Yeah, correct. Is a car alive? Maintaining constant conditions. Well, in my room I have a thermometer, and which is connected to the heating system and the air conditioning system. And if it's too hot, then the heating system is turned off, and it maintains a constant room temperature. Is this not homeostasis? Well, actually, no. It's my room is not alive. My room is not able to do all the other things. It's only able to do that. What about candles? You have one candle, and you're able to light other candles with one candle. Is this not kind of like a reproduction of fire? Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, you are able to multiply a candle flame, but it's not really considered reproduction, and a candle is not alive, and the other things are missing. Or growth. Are not certain clouds able to grow? Are clouds alive? No, of course not. So this means essentially living things must have all of these characteristics, and not only individual ones. So that is basically, this basically summarizes it. And I would advise you to, when you see a living organism somewhere in nature, well, simply ask yourself, how does it respond to the environment? How do plants respond to the environment? For example, they grow towards light. How do they feed? How do they keep their internal conditions the same? Yeah, ask yourself, and you will actually discover, if you think about it, and if you look hard enough, then you're going to find all of these characteristics in all of the living things.